The afternoon sun cast long shadows across Jefferson Park as Sebastian Hargrove adjusted his designer sunglasses and Italian leather shoes. At 43, he carried himself with the confidence of someone who had spent his entire life being told he was exceptional. The breeze ruffled his carefully styled salt and pepper hair as he walked through the park, taking a shortcut to his favorite coffee shop, where they knew exactly how he liked his pour-over. Sebastian was tired. He had spent the morning listening to auditions for scholarships at Westwood Conservatory, where he served as the head piano instructor. Most of the young players had been technically proficient but painfully boring. No soul, he had whispered to Dean Patterson after a particularly bland performance of a Beethoven sonata. They play the notes but miss the music. As he walked through the central plaza of the park, Sebastian heard piano music floating through the air. The city had installed a public piano last spring, a refurbished upright painted with colorful flowers and protected by a small awning. Sebastian usually ignored the instrument, as it was typically occupied by children plunking out heart and soul, or teenagers showing off with simplified pop songs. But today, the music that reached his ears was different. Someone was playing Debussy's Clair de Lune and playing it well. Sebastian paused, tilting his head slightly. The tempo was unusual, slightly slower than traditional interpretations, and some of the dynamics seemed improvised. But there was something captivating about it. His curiosity piqued. Sebastian changed direction and moved toward the small crowd that had gathered around the piano. He expected to see one of his colleagues or perhaps a student from the conservatory. Instead, he found a woman he'd never seen before. She was perhaps in her late 30s with straight black hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Her clothes were unremarkable: jeans, a plain blue sweater, and worn sneakers. Nothing about her appearance suggested musical training or sophistication. Yet her fingers moved across the keys with undeniable grace. Sebastian watched, his expert eye catching small technical flaws in her playing. Her wrist position wasn't perfect, and she occasionally used fingering that no proper teacher would recommend. But despite these mistakes, the music she created was undeniably moving. Several people in the small audience had closed their eyes, transported by the gentle rise and fall of the melody. When she finished, the crowd broke into enthusiastic applause. The woman, Mei Lin, though Sebastian didn't know her name yet, smiled softly and nodded in thanks. As people dropped coins and small bills into a jar beside the piano, Sebastian noticed her hands. They were not the hands of a professional musician, slightly rough with short, unmanicured nails. The hands of someone who worked for a living. "That was quite lovely," said an elderly woman leaning on her cane. "Do you perform somewhere regularly, dear? I'd love to come hear you." "Oh no," May replied with a slight accent Sebastian couldn't quite place. "I just play here sometimes on my day off. It makes me happy to share music." "You should be on a real stage," someone else called out. Sebastian felt a strange tightness in his chest. The praise being heaped on this amateur bothered him in a way he couldn't immediately identify. He had dedicated his life to perfecting his craft. Years at Juilliard, countless competitions, rigorous practice schedules, and sacrifices that these people couldn't begin to understand. Yet here they were, just as moved by this woman's imperfect rendition as they might be by one of his meticulously crafted performances. Before he could stop himself, Sebastian stepped forward. "Interesting interpretation," he said, his voice carrying the polished tone of someone used to being listened to. "Though I noticed you took some rather significant liberties with the tempo in the middle section." The crowd parted slightly as he approached. May looked up, her dark eyes meeting his without embarrassment or apology. "I play how it feels right to me," she said simply. Sebastian gave a thin smile. Yes, well, Debussy was quite specific about his intentions. There's value in honoring the composer's vision rather than imposing one's own limitations on the piece. A murmur ran through the small crowd. The atmosphere had shifted from appreciation to discomfort. May's expression remained calm, but her eyes flashed with something, not anger exactly, but a quiet determination. "Music speaks differently to different hearts," she replied. "Sometimes the composer starts the conversation, but the player and listener continue it." A few people nodded in agreement. Sebastian felt his irritation grow. Who was this woman to philosophize about music? Did she know who he was? "Do you have formal training?" he asked. though his tone made it clear he already knew the answer. Some long ago, May said, closing the piano lid gently. But life took me in other directions. That's evident in your technique, Sebastian said. He was being unkind, and somewhere deep down he knew it. But something about this woman's quiet confidence, despite her obvious limitations, had struck a nerve. An uncomfortable silence fell over the group. May began to gather her things, a worn messenger bag and a water bottle. I'm Sebastian Hargrove, he said suddenly, as if his name would explain his behavior. I'm the head piano instructor at Westwood Conservatory. A flicker of recognition crossed a few faces in the crowd, but May simply nodded politely. I'm May, she replied, offering no last name or credentials in return. Sebastian should have left it there. He should have walked away, gotten his coffee, and forgotten about the woman in the park with her imperfect Debussy. Instead, he heard himself say, I'm hosting a charity gala for the Conservatory's Scholarship Fund next Friday evening. Perhaps you'd be interested in attending? May hesitated, clearly surprised by the sudden invitation. That's very kind, but not just attending, Sebastian continued, his voice growing louder as more people stopped to listen. I think it would be interesting to have you perform. Whispers rippled through the growing crowd. May looked genuinely confused. You want me to play at your gala? I'm proposing something of a musical exchange, Sebastian said, warming to his impulsive idea. A piano duel, if you will. I'll play a piece, then you'll play. Let the audience decide which interpretation speaks to them more deeply. The crowd's reaction was immediate. Excited murmurs and wide eyes at the unexpected drama unfolding before them. I don't think, May began, unless you're not comfortable playing for a more discerning audience, Sebastian added, knowing exactly how the challenge would sound. May fell silent, studying his face. For a moment, Sebastian thought he saw something like amusement in her eyes, but it was quickly replaced by thoughtful consideration. When and where is this gala? She asked finally. Next Friday, 8 p.m. at Westwood Hall, Sebastian replied, surprised that she was actually considering it. He pulled a business card from his wallet and handed it to her. My contact information. Let me know what piece you'll be playing so we don't duplicate. May took the card, looking at it for a long moment before tucking it into her pocket. And if I come, what happens afterward? Sebastian hadn't thought that far ahead, but he improvised smoothly. A small donation will be made to the charity of the winner's choice. In the spirit of giving. I see, May said quietly. She shouldered her bag and picked up the jar with its modest collection of tips. I'll think about it, Mr. Hargrove. As she walked away, the crowd began to disperse, but not before several people gave Sebastian disapproving looks. He ignored them, suddenly questioning his impulsive challenge. What had he been thinking? The gala was meant to impress potential donors, not serve as a venue for him to put an amateur in her place. Yet as he continued on to the coffee shop, Sebastian found himself hoping she would accept. There was something about May that intrigued him. Her quiet confidence, her unconventional approach, and most of all, the undeniable emotional response she had evoked from her listeners, despite her technical shortcomings. She won't come, he told himself as he ordered his coffee. But later that evening, as he practiced in his penthouse apartment with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, Sebastian found himself playing Clair de Lune, experimenting with a slower tempo in the middle section, searching for whatever magic May had found in those notes that had so captivated her audience in the park. His phone chimed with a text message, an unknown number. This is May from the park. I accept your challenge. I'll be playing Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, upper 9, number 2. Sebastian stared at the message, feeling a strange mixture of satisfaction and unease. The gala had just become much more interesting than he had planned. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as May ran a mop across the elementary school cafeteria floor. All around her, tiny chairs sat upturned on tables waiting for tomorrow's chaos of spilled milk and dropped sandwiches. It was nearly 9 in the evening and her shoulders ached from a long day of cleaning. Still here, May? Principal Donna Chen poked her head through the cafeteria doors. You're working too late again. May smiled and leaned on her mop. Almost done. Just this corner left. Donna walked in, her sensible shoes squeaking slightly on the wet floor. You know, you're the only person I've ever met who seems to actually enjoy mopping. It's peaceful, May said with a small shrug. Gives me time to think. What she didn't say was that the repetitive motion reminded her of practicing scales as a child. Back and forth, building muscle memory until her arms moved on their own. 20 years ago, her days had been filled with a different kind of repetition at the Shanghai Conservatory of Music, where she had spent 8 hours daily at the piano, working toward a future that had once seemed certain. "You look distracted today," Donna said, helping May put away the cleaning supplies. "Everything okay?" May hesitated. Since the encounter in the park 3 days ago, Sebastian Hargrove's business card had burned a hole in her pocket. She had accepted his challenge in a moment of pride, but doubt had been creeping in ever since. "I did something impulsive," May admitted. "I agreed to play piano at a fancy event." Donna's eyebrows shot up. "Piano? You play?" May nodded. In the 4 years she had worked at Oak Ridge Elementary, she had never mentioned her musical background to anyone. Why would she? That life was over, tucked away like sheet music in a drawer. "I used to play before," she said simply. Donna knew bits and pieces of May's history, that she had come to America from China after losing her parents, that she had once studied music, that her plans had changed. But even Donna didn't know the full story. How May had been a prodigy, how her photo had once appeared in music magazines, how scouts from international conservatories had come to hear the girl who could play Liszt's Hungarian Rhapsodies from memory at age 12. "This event," Donna said carefully. "Is it important to you?" May finished wringing out the mop and hung it on its hook. "Not exactly. A man heard me playing in the park and challenged me. He's a famous pianist, I think. He teaches at that fancy music school across town. And you said yes?" Donna sounded impressed. "Good for you." "I don't know why I said yes," May admitted. "He was so sure of himself. So certain I wasn't good enough." Donna nodded knowingly. "You want to prove him wrong?" May laughed softly. "Maybe. Or maybe I just miss playing for people who are really listening." After saying goodnight to Donna, May walked to the bus stop, her steps heavy with exhaustion. Her small apartment was a 30-minute ride away, a one-bedroom unit above a laundromat, where the constant hum of dryers provided a white noise that helped her sleep. As she waited for the bus, May pulled out Sebastian's business card again. Sebastian Hargrove, head piano instructor, Westwood Conservatory. The card was thick, cream-colored with embossed lettering. It probably cost more than she made in an hour. The bus arrived with a hiss of brakes, and May tucked the card away. As she found a seat by the window, her mind drifted to the piece she had chosen, Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. She closed her eyes and moved her fingers slightly against her thigh, feeling the familiar notes under her fingertips. 20 years ago, she had played this piece at her final recital in Shanghai, just days before the accident that took her parents. Her father had been so proud, filming the performance on a camcorder that was later destroyed in the crash. Sometimes May wondered if her memory of that night was real, or if she had created it from the fragments people had told her afterward. How the audience had fallen silent. How even her stern instructor had wiped away a tear. The bus jolted to a stop, bringing May back to the present. This was her reality now. Late-night bus rides, a tiny apartment, hands roughened by cleaning supplies instead of calloused from hours of practice. Yet for the first time in years, she felt a familiar stirring, the nervous excitement before a performance. When she reached her apartment, May unlocked the 3 deadbolts and stepped inside. The space was small but tidy, a futon that doubled as a couch, a kitchenette with a hot plate, and a bookshelf filled with paperbacks found at library sales. In the corner, taking up precious space, stood her one luxury, an old digital keyboard with weighted keys that she had found at a garage sale 5 years ago. May set down her bag and walked to the keyboard, running her fingers lightly over the plastic keys. It was nothing like a real piano, but it had kept her connected to music through the years. She turned it on, plugged in headphones so she wouldn't disturb her neighbors, and began to play. The Nocturne came back to her like an old friend, though her fingers felt stiff at first. It had been months since she had played anything serious, content to simply mess around with favorite melodies when the mood struck. Now as she reached a difficult passage, she fumbled and stopped. "Too rusty," she murmured to herself. May started again, moving more slowly through the ornate passage. By the 3rd attempt, her muscle memory began to return. It was like riding a bicycle. Her body remembered what her conscious mind had forgotten. For 2 hours, she played, stopping only when her upstairs neighbor thumped on the floor, a signal that even with headphones, the clicking of the keyboard keys was audible through the thin ceiling. May turned off the keyboard and stretched her cramping fingers. What was she thinking? The gala was in 6 days. Sebastian Hargrove had probably been playing for hours every day of his adult life, on instruments worth more than everything May owned. She was a school janitor with a cheap keyboard and skills that had gathered dust for 2 decades. May made herself a cup of tea and stared out her small window at the street below. A few cars passed by, their headlights briefly illuminating her sparse living room. What would the people at this gala think when she walked onto the stage? Would they laugh? Would Sebastian's face show satisfaction at having proven his point? Her phone buzzed with a text from Donna. "Sorry to bother you so late. Was thinking about what you said. The piano in the music room is decent. You're welcome to practice on it after hours if you want. I could stay late tomorrow." May stared at the message, surprised by the unexpected kindness. A real piano with real keys and real sound would make all the difference. She quickly texted back her thanks. As she got ready for bed, May caught her reflection in the bathroom mirror. Her hair was pulled back in its usual practical ponytail, and faint lines had begun to appear around her eyes. She barely resembled the serious young girl who had once been photographed for the Shanghai Music Journal, whose future had seemed destined for concert halls and international tours. That night, May dreamed of her mother adjusting her dress before a recital, of her father's hands, so large and calloused from factory work, clapping until they were red after her performance. She dreamed of the moment she had first heard about the car accident, how the news had hit her like a physical blow, how the piano had suddenly seemed trivial in the face of such loss. She woke before dawn, her pillow damp with tears. But as she made coffee in the dim light of early morning, May felt something she hadn't experienced in years, a sense of purpose. The gala was still a terrible idea. She would probably embarrass herself. But for the first time in 2 decades, she would play for an audience on a real piano, even if it ended badly. It was something. Later that day, as she mopped the hallways of Oak Ridge Elementary, May hummed the nocturne under her breath. A young music teacher passing by paused, head tilted. "That's beautiful," she said. "Chopin, right?" May nodded, surprised to be recognized. "Do you play?" the teacher asked. May hesitated only briefly before answering. "Yes," she said. "I play." It felt good to say those words aloud, like reclaiming a part of herself that had been set aside but never truly lost. After school, she would practice on the piano in the music room, and then again on her keyboard at home. She would work her stiff fingers until they remembered their old grace. She would prepare as if this performance mattered, because somehow it had begun to matter very much indeed. Across town, in his spacious office at Westwood Conservatory, Sebastian Hargrove added May's name to the gala program, wondering idly if she would actually show up. He had almost convinced himself the encounter in the park had been a momentary madness on his part. Surely the woman would come to her senses and back out. He would be surprised. Sebastian stood at his floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the city lights flicker on as dusk settled over the skyline. In one hand, he held a glass of expensive scotch. In the other, his phone displaying an email from the conservatory's event coordinator. "Ticket sales for the gala have doubled since last week," the email read. "The piano duel concept is generating significant buzz. Several local music blogs have picked up the story. The David versus Goliath angle seems to be resonating with people." Sebastian frowned and set down his phone. What had begun as an impulsive challenge had somehow transformed into the main attraction of his annual charity gala. Dean Patterson had called earlier, delighted by the surge in interest but concerned about the unconventional format. "Are you sure about this, Sebastian?" the dean had asked. "What if she's actually good?" "She won't be," Sebastian had replied with more confidence than he felt. "She has natural musicality, yes, but her technique is undeveloped. The audience will appreciate the novelty. We'll raise more money for the scholarship fund, and everyone goes home happy." Now, alone in his penthouse, Sebastian felt the first twinges of doubt. He picked up his phone again and opened a social media app. Someone had posted a video of May playing in the park. Not the day he had encountered her, but apparently a more recent performance. The video had thousands of views already. Sebastian pressed play and watched May seated at the public piano, her hands moving with surprising fluidity through a piece he recognized as Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. Her interpretation was unconventional, slightly more rubato than traditional performances would allow, but undeniably affecting. The comments below the video ranged from "Who is she?" to "Can't wait for the showdown with Hargrove." Sebastian closed the app and walked to his Steinway grand piano that dominated the living space. He ran his fingers along its polished surface before sitting down on the bench. The gala was 3 days away, and he had already decided on his piece. Liszt's La Campanella, one of the most technically challenging works in the piano repertoire. It was perhaps overkill for a charity event, but Sebastian felt he needed to make a statement. He flexed his fingers and began to play, the rapid, bell-like notes filling his apartment with dazzling sound. After 20 minutes of practice, he stopped and massaged his left hand. A slight twinge had developed in his fourth finger. Nothing serious, but a reminder of the tendinitis that had plagued him last year. Sebastian's phone rang. It was Vanessa, his publicist. "Have you seen the latest?" she asked without preamble. "The video of her playing Beethoven?" "Yes, no, not that. Someone dug up an old article from a Chinese music journal. Apparently your mystery woman was some kind of prodigy in Shanghai 20 years ago. There's a grainy photo of her as a teenager accepting an award." Sebastian felt his stomach tighten. "Send me the link." Moments later, he was staring at a scanned page from a 1994 issue of the Shanghai Music Journal. The image quality was poor, but he could make out a serious-looking teenage girl holding a trophy. The Google-translated caption read, "Meilin Zhou, 14, wins prestigious young artist competition with her performance of Chopin's Ballade No. 1. Did you know about this?" Vanessa asked. "Of course not," Sebastian replied, still studying the image. The girl in the photo was recognizably May, though younger and dressed in formal attire, rather than the simple clothes he had seen her wearing in the park. "Well, ticket sales are through the roof," Vanessa continued. "The story is too perfect. Child prodigy disappears for 20 years, resurfaces as a janitor, gets challenged by famous pianist. People are eating it up." After ending the call, Sebastian sat motionless at his piano. Meilin Zhou, a competition winner, a former prodigy. This changed things. Across town, May was experiencing her own version of pre-performance anxiety. She sat at the upright piano in Oak Ridge Elementary's music room, her fingers moving through the nocturne for what felt like the 100th time that week. "That was beautiful," Principal Donna said from the doorway. "I had no idea you played like that." May smiled tiredly. It was nearly 8 p.m., and she had been practicing since finishing her cleaning duties at 5. "I'm still rusty. My fingers don't move like they used to." Donna came into the room and sat on a tiny chair meant for a first grader. "I Googled this Sebastian Hargrove. He seems like a real piece of work." May laughed softly. "He's very sure of himself. The gala is Friday, right?" "Are you nervous?" May nodded, closing the piano lid gently. "Terrified. I haven't performed in front of a real audience in 20 years, and never in America." "You'll be amazing," Donna assured her. "Oh, I almost forgot why I came to find you. There's a reporter from the local arts blog who wants to interview you. Apparently, someone found an old article about you winning a competition in China." May felt the blood drain from her face. "What?" Donna handed her phone to May, showing an email from someone named Tyler at CityBeat Arts. The message requested an interview with former piano prodigy Meilin Zhou regarding her upcoming performance at the Westwood Conservatory Gala. "How did they find out?" May whispered, more to herself than to Donna. "Is it a secret?" Donna asked, confused. May handed the phone back. "No, not exactly. It's just, that was another life, before everything changed." On the bus ride home, May's mind raced. She had never expected anyone to connect her to her past. When she'd immigrated to America after her parents' death, she had simplified her name, dropping her family name of Zhou when she discovered Americans struggled to pronounce it correctly. She had been just Mei Lin, and eventually just May, for so long that her competition days felt like they had happened to someone else. She declined the interview request when she got home, responding simply that she preferred to focus on preparing for the performance. But curiosity led her to search her own name online, something she had never done before. There it was, the old photo from the Shanghai competition, her teenage self looking solemn in a borrowed dress, holding a trophy that had been sold years ago to help pay for her plane ticket to America. The comments below the article made her wince. Can't believe she went from child prodigy to janitor. Tragic story. Wonder what happened. Hargrove has no idea what he's gotten himself into. Me closed her laptop and sat in silence. The narrative being created online bore little resemblance to her reality. There had been no tragic downfall, no mysterious disappearance, just a series of hard choices after losing her parents, selling their small apartment to pay debts, using the remaining money to follow her mother's brother to America, discovering that her uncle's promises of support had been exaggerated. By the time she arrived in New York at 18, speaking limited English and with dwindling funds, music had become a luxury she couldn't afford. She had taken any job she could find: waitress, hotel maid, retail clerk, moving from city to city as opportunities arose, eventually settling here 5 years ago, when the janitorial position at Oak Ridge offered stability and health insurance. The piano had remained her private joy, something she did for herself, not for audiences or acclaim. Until now. May opened her digital keyboard and placed her hands on the keys. Instead of the nocturne she had been practicing, her fingers found their way to Chopin's Ballade No. 1, the piece she had played for that long-ago competition, the last piece she had performed before her world changed. It was more technically demanding than the nocturne, with dramatic shifts in tempo and mood. Her fingers stumbled through the opening bars, muscle memory failing her after so many years. But as she continued, something awakened in her, a connection to her younger self, to the girl who had once played with such confidence and fire. By the time she reached the thunderous finale, May was playing from someplace beyond conscious thought. Her small apartment filled with sound only she could hear through her headphones. When the final notes faded, she realized her face was wet with tears. May made a decision then, her heart pounding. She would not play the nocturne at the gala. She would play the Ballade, her last triumph before her life derailed, the piece that had once defined her potential. It was riskier, certainly. The technical challenges were significant, and she had less than 3 days to prepare. But something told her it was the right choice. She sent a text to Sebastian, her fingers trembling slightly. "I'm changing my piece. We'll be playing Chopin's Ballade No. 1 in G minor, Opera 23. His response came quickly. "Bold choice. It's a demanding piece." May could almost hear the skepticism in his terse reply. She didn't care. For the first time in years, she was playing for herself, not to prove anything to Sebastian Hargrove or anyone else. The next morning, May asked Donna for permission to practice in the music room during her lunch break and after work hours until the gala. She arrived earlier than usual and stayed late into the evening, her mop forgotten as her hands remembered what they were born to do. Word spread quickly among the school staff. The art teacher brought May a sandwich when she practiced through lunch. The physical education instructor offered her arnica gel for her sore forearms. Even the stern school secretary left a note of encouragement on the piano one morning. As Friday approached, a strange calm settled over May. She had no illusions about beating Sebastian Hargrove on his own turf, but she had rediscovered something she thought she had lost forever. The joy of losing herself completely in music, of expressing through her fingers what words could never capture. Win or lose, she would play her heart out on that stage, and for the first time in 20 years, that seemed like enough. The night of the gala arrived with the sort of perfect early autumn weather that made the city shine. Westwood Hall, with its imposing columns and broad stone steps, was illuminated by elegant spotlights. A red carpet stretched from the curb to the entrance, where men and women in formal attire gathered in excited clusters. Inside, Sebastian paced the green room, occasionally flexing his fingers or adjusting his bow tie in the mirror. His concert tuxedo fit him perfectly, as it should for the price he had paid. On a small table lay a program for the evening. The words "Special Performance Piano Duel," printed in elegant script below the cocktail hour and auction listings. "Quite the turnout," Dean Patterson said, entering the room with 2 glasses of champagne. He handed one to Sebastian. "I've never seen the hall so packed. We've already raised twice what we did last year, and the auction hasn't even started." Sebastian nodded stiffly, taking a small sip. "Has she arrived?" The dean shook his head. "Not yet. You don't think she'll back out, do you? It would be rather anticlimactic after all the publicity." "She'll be here," Sebastian said, though uncertainty gnawed at him. He had spent the past 2 days practicing relentlessly, pushing through the increasing pain in his left hand. La Campanella had never sounded better, each note crystal clear, each technical challenge executed with precision, yet something felt off. Last night, alone in his apartment, he had found himself playing the ballade that May had chosen, remembering how it had moved him when he first heard it as a student. There was raw emotion in that piece, triumph and tragedy intertwined in a way that had always felt slightly beyond his grasp. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Vanessa, his publicist, entered looking flustered. "She's here," she said. "And you won't believe what she's wearing." Sebastian raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "She came in her work clothes," Vanessa said. "The woman is wearing jeans and a sweater to a black tie gala." Dean Patterson nearly choked on his champagne. "Should we find her something to wear? Maybe one of the staff—" "No," Sebastian interrupted. "Let her perform as she is." Both Vanessa and the dean looked at him in surprise. "Are you sure?" Vanessa asked. "The photos will be striking." "Good," Sebastian said, suddenly certain. "That's the point, isn't it? The contrast between us. It's what everyone came to see." Across the hall in a small practice room, May sat alone at an upright piano. She had arrived through the service entrance, hoping to avoid attention, but a photographer had spotted her and called out her name. The flash of his camera had momentarily blinded her as she hurried inside. A young staff member had shown her to this room with a mixture of confusion and pity, clearly baffled by her casual attire. May had considered buying something nicer to wear but ultimately decided against it. She couldn't afford an evening gown, and wearing her one good outfit, a simple black dress she used for job interviews, felt like pretending to be someone she wasn't. May took a deep breath and placed her hands on the keys, running through the opening of the ballad one final time. Her fingers moved smoothly now, the hesitation of the past few days replaced by a quiet confidence. She had practiced until her hands ached, until the notes flowed from memory without conscious thought. A clock on the wall showed 8:45 p.m. According to the schedule she had been given, the duel would begin at 9 after the welcoming speeches and before the charity auction. May closed her eyes and thought of her parents, wondering what they would think of this moment. Her father, who had worked double shifts to pay for her lessons. Her mother, who had never learned to read music but could hum along with every piece May played. They would be proud, she whispered to herself. A gentle knock broke her reverie. The door opened to reveal Principal Donna, looking almost unrecognizable in an elegant blue dress, her hair styled in a way May had never seen. "Donna," May exclaimed, surprised. "What are you doing here? Did you think I'd miss this?" Donna replied with a warm smile. Half the school staff pooled money to buy tickets when they heard what was happening. "We're all here for you." May felt her throat tighten with emotion. "Thank you," she managed. "I'm nervous." Donna crossed the room and gave May's shoulder a gentle squeeze. "Don't be. Just play the way you did in the music room. Play for yourself." At precisely 9, the lights in the main hall dimmed. The audience, a mix of conservatory benefactors, music enthusiasts, and curiosity seekers drawn by the unusual duel, fell silent as Dean Patterson took the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Westwood Conservatory's annual charity gala," he began. "Tonight we have a special treat, a unique musical exchange between our own Sebastian Hargrove and guest pianist May Lin." Polite applause filled the hall as Sebastian walked onto the stage, the spotlight catching the perfect tailoring of his tuxedo. He bowed slightly, acknowledging the audience with practiced grace. "Sebastian will perform first," the dean continued, playing Franz Liszt's La Campanella. Sebastian seated himself at the magnificent Bosendorfer grand piano that dominated the stage. He adjusted the bench, flexed his fingers one final time, and then launched into the piece. From the first notes, it was clear that Sebastian was a master of his craft. The famously difficult piece unfolded with seemingly effortless precision, each trill executed perfectly, each leap across the keyboard landing exactly where it should. His left hand, despite the lingering pain, cooperated fully, allowing him to build the piece to its dazzling conclusion. The audience erupted in applause as Sebastian rose and bowed deeply. Several people stood calling "Bravo." The performance had been technically flawless, perhaps the best rendition of La Campanella many in the audience had ever heard. Sebastian moved to the side of the stage, a small smile playing at his lips. Whatever came next, he had shown what decades of rigorous training and dedication could produce. He had made his statement. And now, Dean Patterson said, returning to the microphone, "Please welcome Mei Lin, playing Chopin's Ballad No. 1 in G minor." A murmur rippled through the audience as Mei walked onto the stage. In her simple jeans and blue sweater, with her hair pulled back in its usual ponytail, she looked startlingly out of place amid the glittering finery of the gala attendees. Someone near the front actually gasped audibly. Mei felt hundreds of eyes on her as she crossed to the piano. She caught sight of Donna and the other Oak Ridge staff members in the middle section, their encouraging smiles like beacons in a sea of skeptical faces. At the edge of the stage, Sebastian watched her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Not quite dismissive anymore, but guarded. Mei sat at the piano, taking a moment to adjust the bench. The Bösendorfer was unlike any instrument she had played before, even finer than the Steinway at the Shanghai Conservatory. She placed her hands on the keys, feeling their cool smoothness beneath her fingers. For a heartbeat, panic threatened to overwhelm her. What was she doing here in this grand hall among these people? She was a janitor who practiced on a digital keyboard in a tiny apartment. She didn't belong on this stage. Then she closed her eyes and thought of the park, of playing simply for the joy of sharing music. She thought of her parents, of Donna and her colleagues who had come to support her. She took a deep breath and began to play. The opening notes of the ballad rang out, gentle, questioning, like the beginning of a story told in the glow of firelight. As the piece progressed, Mei fell into it completely, each phrase flowing naturally into the next. When the tempo increased, her fingers responded with a fluidity that surprised even her, dancing across the keys as if 20 years had never passed. In the audience, something shifted. The initial curiosity about the plainly dressed woman gave way to something deeper as the music took hold. People leaned forward in their seats, drawn in by the narrative quality of her playing. This wasn't just impressive technique, though her technique was indeed remarkable, but something more profound, more human. Sebastian, watching from the side, felt the change come over the room. He had performed La Campanella perfectly, giving the audience exactly what they expected, a display of virtuosic skill that left them admiring his abilities. But Mei was giving them something they hadn't expected, a performance that made them feel. As the ballad built toward its tempestuous conclusion, Mei's body swayed slightly with the music, her face reflecting the emotional journey of the piece. When she reached the powerful final passage, her hands moved with confident strength, drawing sounds from the piano that seemed to contain all the joy and sorrow of a human life. The final chord hung in the air for a suspended moment. Then the audience erupted. The applause was immediate and overwhelming, not the polite, appreciative response Sebastian had received, but something raw and spontaneous. People rose to their feet, some wiping away tears, others calling out in admiration. In the middle section, Donna and the Oak Ridge staff were on their feet, clapping until their hands hurt. Mei opened her eyes, momentarily disoriented by the response. She rose shakily and offered a small, awkward bow, unused to such attention. As the applause continued, she glanced toward Sebastian, expecting to see disappointment or anger on his face. Instead, she found him looking at her with an expression of genuine wonder, as if truly seeing her for the first time. And in that moment, surrounded by the thunderous approval of the audience, Mei felt something long dormant bloom inside her chest. Not pride in having proven Sebastian wrong, but simple joy at having found her way back to the piano, back to herself. The applause seemed to last forever. Mei stood awkwardly by the piano, unsure what to do as the audience continued their standing ovation. Dean Patterson returned to the stage, beaming with obvious delight at the crowd's reaction. "Well," he said into the microphone once the applause had finally begun to fade, "I think we can all agree that was extraordinary." More applause erupted along with shouts of agreement. In the third row, an older woman in an elegant black dress wiped tears from her eyes. As we announced at the beginning of the evening, the dean continued, "We invited our audience to decide which performance spoke to them more deeply. While our original plan was to have a formal vote, I believe the response we've just witnessed speaks for itself." He turned to Mei with genuine respect in his eyes. "Ms. Lin, I believe the audience has chosen you as the winner of tonight's musical exchange." The crowd roared its approval. Mei felt her cheeks flush with embarrassment and pleasure. She hadn't come expecting to win, hadn't even really thought of the event as a competition. She had simply wanted to play her best, to honor the music and her own forgotten talents. From the side of the stage, Sebastian stepped forward. The audience quieted, watching with interest as he approached May. His face was unreadable as he stopped before her. "Congratulations," he said, extending his hand. May hesitated before taking it. His grip was firm, professional. Up close, she could see something complicated in his eyes, wounded pride wrestling with genuine admiration. "Thank you," she replied softly. "As winner," Sebastian said, his voice carrying across the now silent hall, "you're entitled to name a charity to receive tonight's donation. Do you have one in mind?" May hadn't prepared for this. She thought quickly and then smiled. "Oak Ridge Elementary School's music program," she said. "To buy instruments for children who can't afford them." The audience applauded again. Donna and the other Oak Ridge staff members exchanged excited glances. "A wonderful choice," Dean Patterson said, stepping forward. "And might I add, Ms. Lynn, that if you ever wish to share your considerable talents in a teaching capacity, Westwood Conservatory would be honored to discuss opportunities with you." May's eyes widened in surprise. Was he offering her a job? Before she could respond, the dean turned back to the audience. "Thank you all for coming tonight. The silent auction will continue in the main lobby for another hour, and refreshments are available in the reception hall. Please give one more round of applause for our incredible pianists." As the applause rose again, Sebastian leaned closer to May. "Would you join me for a moment?" he asked quietly. "Backstage?" Curious, May nodded and followed him through a side door into a quiet hallway. Sebastian ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair, suddenly looking less polished than he had on stage. "I owe you an apology," he said simply. May tilted her head, waiting for him to continue. "When I challenged you in the park, I was—" He paused, searching for the right words. "I was being arrogant, dismissive. I heard you play and immediately categorized you based on what I perceived as technical flaws, without appreciating what you were actually creating." May was silent for a moment. "Why did you challenge me?" she asked finally. "Really?" Sebastian looked away, examining a framed poster on the wall. "Because the crowd loved your playing," he admitted. "They were moved by it in a way they rarely respond to my performances. It bothered me." "Your playing is incredible," May said honestly. "Your technique is perfect." "Perfect, yes," Sebastian said with a wry smile. "That's exactly the problem." He flexed his left hand unconsciously, and May noticed him wince slightly. "Are you hurt?" she asked. Sebastian shook his head dismissively. "Old injury. Tendinitis. It flares up sometimes." An awkward silence fell between them, two strangers connected only by the piano and this strange evening. "I should get back," May said finally. "My friends are waiting," Sebastian nodded. "Of course. But before you go—" He reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card, different from the one he had given her in the park. "I'd like to talk to you about something. Would you call me tomorrow?" May took the card, curious. "About what?" "A proposition," Sebastian said. "Something that might benefit us both." Before she could ask more questions, they were interrupted by Vanessa, who needed Sebastian for photos with major donors. With a nod of farewell, he followed his publicist back toward the reception. May rejoined Donna and her colleagues, who surrounded her with hugs and congratulations. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of introductions and compliments. Several conservatory board members asked for her contact information, and an arts reporter requested an interview for the city newspaper. By the time May finally left Westwood Hall shortly before midnight, her head was spinning. Donna had offered her a ride home, but May declined, needing time to process everything that had happened. The night air was cool as she waited at the bus stop, still dressed in her everyday clothes that now felt strangely inappropriate after hours in the elegant surroundings of the gala. A few other late-night passengers waited nearby, none of them aware that the ordinary-looking woman in jeans had, just hours before, moved an entire concert hall to tears with her playing. The next morning, May woke early despite her late night. For a moment she wondered if the events of the previous evening had been a dream. But there on her small kitchen table lay Sebastian's business card and several congratulatory texts from Donna and other colleagues. It was Saturday, her day off. May made coffee and sat by her window, watching the city come to life below. After finishing her coffee, she picked up Sebastian's card and dialed the number. He answered on the second ring. Sebastian Hargrove. It's May, she said. You asked me to call? Yes, he replied, sounding relieved. Thank you. Are you free this afternoon? I'd like to show you something. Curiosity got the better of her. All right, she agreed. They arranged to meet at the conservatory at 2 o'clock. After hanging up, May wondered what Sebastian could possibly want to show her. More than that, she wondered why she had agreed to meet him again. The conservatory was quiet when May arrived, most of the students gone for the weekend. Sebastian was waiting in the lobby, dressed more casually than she had ever seen him, in dark jeans and a simple button-down shirt. Thank you for coming, he said, leading her down a corridor lined with practice rooms. I've been thinking about what happened last night, about your playing and what Dean Patterson said. He stopped at a door marked Studio 7 and unlocked it. Inside was a spacious room with a baby grand piano, shelves of music books, and a small seating area. This is my teaching studio, Sebastian explained, or one of them. I have another at my apartment for private students. May looked around, taking in the framed concert posters and photographs of Sebastian with famous musicians and conductors. The thing is, Sebastian continued, I've been thinking about starting a new program here. Something less traditional than our usual curriculum. What kind of program? May asked, running her fingers lightly over the piano keys. A community outreach initiative, Sebastian said. Lessons for people who might not otherwise have access to classical music education. Working adults, older beginners, people who don't fit the traditional conservatory model. May looked up, surprised. That doesn't sound like something Westwood would be interested in. After last night, they're interested in whatever I suggest, Sebastian said with a hint of his old confidence. Your performance made quite an impression on the board members. And what does this have to do with me? May asked, though she was beginning to understand. Sebastian took a deep breath. I'd like you to teach here, he said simply. Part-time at first, if that works better with your current job. We'd pay you, of course, May stared at him. You want me to teach? I haven't played seriously in 20 years until this week. And yet you captivated an entire audience of musical elitists with one performance, Sebastian pointed out. You have something that can't be taught in traditional lessons, something I've spent years trying to find in my own playing. What's that? May asked softly. Authenticity, Sebastian replied. Real emotion, connection. He flexed his left hand again unconsciously. I've spent my entire career perfecting my technique, pushing myself to play the most difficult pieces flawlessly. And somewhere along the way I forgot why I started playing in the first place. May sat down on the piano bench, considering his words. I'm not qualified to teach at a conservatory. Neither am I in some ways, Sebastian admitted, surprising her. I can teach technique all day, but what good is perfect playing without soul? We could learn from each other, May. I could help you rebuild your technical foundation, and you could help me remember what music is supposed to make us feel. It was the most honest thing she had heard him say. For the first time, May saw beyond the polished exterior to the dedicated musician underneath. Someone who, like her, had lost something important along his journey. I don't know, she said hesitantly. I have a job, responsibilities. Just think about it, Sebastian urged. Come in one afternoon a week to start. See if you like it. May's fingers found the keys of the baby grand, playing a soft chord progression. The piano was beautiful, its tone rich and warm. There's something else, Sebastian said, watching her play. The conservatory is establishing a new scholarship in your name. The Maylene Joe Fellowship for Non-Traditional Students. The money raised at last night's gala will fund the first year. May's hands froze on the keys. My name, but why? Because your story matters, Sebastian said simply. It reminds us that talent doesn't always follow the expected path. That sometimes life intervenes, but music remains. May felt tears threatening and blinked them away. Her name on a scholarship. The idea was overwhelming. Her parents would have been so proud. I'll think about teaching, she promised, but I can't quit my job at Oak Ridge. Those kids and teachers, they supported me when no one else did. Of course, Sebastian nodded. We'll work around your schedule. As May rose to leave, Sebastian moved to the piano and sat down. Before you go, he said, would you play something with me, a duet? May hesitated, then nodded, returning to sit beside him on the bench. Schubert's Fantasia in F minor, Sebastian suggested.